quiet. That was amazing. Hello, everybody. I'm Anne. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And I'm going to prematurely thank our speakers. I'm assuming they will be both charming and informative. Our run today, I just want to give you a quick overview. What we'll do is have each of our speakers do a quick presentation, really to set the stage for the discussion. I will then invite them to come up on stage and we'll have a panel discussion where I will be inviting your questions. So that is pretty much our order for the day. We will have you finished and at your 2 o'clock meeting. So we'll move things along relatively peacefully. What's that? That's a very good word. All right, I'm going to start right in. Dane, I didn't even ask you if you finished lunch. Too bad, sorry. Let's see, we've got our first speaker. Now, before I introduce Dane, I'd like to just give you a quick understanding of one of the things that I like to do when I introduce people is know something about them that the people they work with wouldn't typically know about them. So that is, to me, a nicer way to introduce someone than reading his bio, which I will just give you a quick understanding of what Dane does. Dane Anderson leads a team that helps tech industry strategists predict and quantify disruptions in the industry so that they can better direct their investments in Asia Pacific, the Middle East, and Africa. All right, that's a quick rundown. That is with Forrester. And on the other side of Dane's world, he ran with the Bulls in Pamplona earlier this year, and about a month ago, he swam with white sharks in South Africa. So I did ask Dane if that was a midlife crisis sort of year, or if he was just a junkie for adventure, and he explained that this is a special birthday year, and so he was challenging himself. Dane, please come up and entertain us.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not that type of a person by nature, but as mentioned, it's kind of a special birthday for me. And many of you are the people run with the Bulls. Ask me about it because I've got it's a little bit scary. So I'd like to kick us off today and share with you Forrester's views on how you bring your business to the cloud, and hopefully move you a little bit further along if you're trying to move your business to the cloud, or however you may be related to cloud computing. And I did want to just mention a few things about Forrester, because some of you might not know who we are and what we do. And when I mentioned that I'm going to give you some of our guidance about the cloud, you say, well, who's Forrester to tell us anything about the cloud?
Dane, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Will you hold this one until they've got yours fixed, because it is difficult to hear.
Okay. Is this better? There we go. Sure. Okay. Okay, hopefully we won't get too much feedback. So I was just saying that I wanted to tell you a little bit about, I'm sorry, do you need the mic? Okay. So what is the basis of Forrester's guidance? And I don't want to go through this in too much detail. Forrester is a publicly traded company. We're a very large advisory and consulting firm for the ICT industry. And everything that we do and everything we say is rooted in research in some fashion. I've been in this industry as an analyst for about coming up on 20 years or so. And I've learned the importance of having a basis when you give opinions, because opinions that aren't rooted in some sort of fact can be very, very dangerous, having lived through the dot-com days. So everything we do and everything we say is rooted in research in some way. And you probably can't read it here, but we engage clients 30,000 times a year, our Forrester analysts do. We do 370,000 surveys a year. And on the topic of cloud computing, if you go to Forrester's website and research, you'll find about 1,700 reports written in the past 18 months. Okay? So this is really the basis of what I'll be sharing with you. We talked to a lot of organizations that have implemented the cloud. We talked to a lot of vendors and we get best practices and mistakes that a lot of companies have made. So that's the basis of what I'll be sharing with you today. And I don't know how well you can see this, but I chose this picture because I think when we talk about cloud computing, it can be very confusing. So for the past 3-4 years, that's all in the IT industry that we've really been talking about. And now it's starting to subside a little bit, the latest buzzwords of big data. But I think for a lot of buyers in the market, it can be very daunting, overwhelming, and confusing. So a picture here of a cluttered office. And what I think we all want to do today is to provide a little bit of organization, structure, and clarity to that. Okay? So we're not going to tackle all of it, we don't have that much time, but hopefully with some of the data that I provide and information, and Todd and Simon, you'll have a little bit more clarity and structure behind at least a few parts of the market that we'll be talking about. Okay, now let me start out and just share with you a picture of Forrester's cloud taxonomy, and this might not clean up the clutter for you, but I'll start with this and I'll try to move it to something that's a little bit simpler. This is a view of all of the parts of the cloud market that we track, okay? On the vertical axis, you have the 3 predominant models that we'll talk about. You have public cloud, virtual private cloud, and then private cloud. And there's a model called hybrid cloud, which mixes those together. Very briefly, a public cloud has the highest level of sharing, and you have multi-tenancy. So you have a lot of customers or companies using the same infrastructure or service. Whereas in a private cloud, it's dedicated to an individual company, and usually that's on premises. They own and run that infrastructure or that service. Then these can be applied on the horizontal axis here across infrastructure, things like server, compute resources, storage, so on and so forth, to applications, things like customer relationship management, business intelligence, human resource applications, and even over to information processes. All of these types of components of IT can be purchased through a cloud model in one of those variations. I think today we'll talk a little bit about what models make sense when, and I'll share with you some of our views on that as well. Okay, but this is really, in a simpler way, probably what you need to know. A lot of you might think of it this way. So very simply, cloud computing is a standardized IT capability, services, software, or infrastructure, delivered via internet technology in a pay-per-use, self-service way. So your company, if you already run IT, can deliver these services to the internet, or it can be a public cloud provider, a telco, Microsoft, Google, so on and so forth, delivering that service. But that's fundamentally what cloud computing is. Okay, now let me share with you a little bit about what our surveys say about cloud computing adoption in Asia Pacific. This is a view of a survey that we did in the 3rd quarter of this year. And the question was, do you currently have a cloud computing initiative or strategy in place within your organization? And we did this in Asia Pacific, excluding Japan. You can see all the countries here. The answer to this, across the 530 organizations we interviewed, these are businesses, not consumers, from small, medium, and large, including the government. 28% of companies, as of the 3rd quarter this year, told us that they have already adopted cloud computing, and another 24% said that they're planning to adopt, and we have 48% that didn't. So we've already hit the tilting point, the tipping point, where there's a majority that have either adopted or are going to be adopting cloud first. So we've been tracking this for the last 4 or 5 years. It's continued to climb. And you'll notice, if you can see it down here on the bottom, Singapore with the highest cloud adoption in the region, with 42% here saying that they've adopted cloud. This is cutting pretty much across all the segments of the market that we track. Small, medium, and large businesses, pretty much across all industries as well. Some of the hotter application categories have been collaboration, applications like WebEx or email applications. Customer relationship management has been another hot area through companies like Salesforce.com or Microsoft as well. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to share with you 5 key views on the cloud from Forrester's perspective, one by one. Then I'll share with you another resource that you can get from us off the web later for more information. Of course, I think the discussion will be quite helpful. But let me just share with you 5 views on the cloud from our perspective. First of all, we really think the cloud is about flexible business service, not technology. Okay? Cloud computing, the the genesis of it really came from the IT industry. But if your focus is on technology alone, you're missing the point. It's really about the business services, flexible business services that the cloud can provide. And as we talk about it today, we will talk about technical things, but one of the things that we always tell our clients is to focus on what do you want to do with the cloud. Just implementing the cloud for the sake of the cloud makes no sense. What is the business objective of that implementation? So that's number one. Number two is that we have seen that the cloud does deliver business value and can enable innovation. One of the hot areas of research we have at Forrester is to look at how companies are innovating. And this is a term that you've heard a lot about as well. And we're finding that the cloud can be a great spark and catalyst for that. In fact, it's interesting that a lot of the best innovations we see from companies are when it's at the intersection point of cloud computing, mobility, analytics, and when you pull those together, the innovations that you can find through information that you obtain from your customers directly in real time or location-based, or through harnessing all the information you gather can really unearth great innovations. Okay, so that's number two. Number three is that it empowers and extends, so prepare for a hybrid environment. Okay? When we talk about the cloud, sometimes in our minds we think either or in a binary way. Really, we think the best implementations and the best way to think about it is how can you augment and extend what you already have rather than rip and replace. Okay? And I think it's a mistake a lot of us make in a lot of different areas when we think about it. We tend to see competitive, competing visions, but this really isn't a complete leap away from what we already have. It's an extension of it or improvement. Fourth, it requires organizational changes. The way in which organizations function with cloud computing needs to change. I'll give you an example or two. One is, in the past, with the way that IT was bought, it was bought by the CIO and the IT department, was managed and run. And I think a lot of us have experienced this. We would be told what PC we could use, and what application we could use, and what mobile phone we could use. That's not the way it works anymore. Now you have business leaders buying their application and running it for sales or for HR. Bringing their devices into work. In fact, we've done surveys that show about 20% of information workers bring their own applications into the workplace to do their job. So they don't wait for IT. So what that means for IT departments is that they really need to now provide the guardrails, if you will, for how businesses buy IT rather than tell them what to do. They need to collaborate much more. So there are a lot of organizational changes that need to take place. And then finally, it is now practical for most enterprises, and there are a number of reasons why this is the case. First of all, security and privacy are far better than they were just 2 or 3 years ago. You have big banks, governments are buying cloud computing implementations, so security and privacy are much better than they used to be. Reliability and availability have also increased a lot. Every time there is downtime for a cloud application, it gets a lot of press and it's seen as a negative. In fact, what we're finding is that that's positive in the sense that cloud providers are getting much better at improving reliability and availability as you go. And then a third reason why we think it's enterprise ready is because there's a lot more choice for the buyer now. With open standards like OpenStack, you don't get locked into the infrastructure in a way maybe that you did in the past, so it's more open. In fact, even the data and the applications now, you can transition between cloud applications. There's a pattern called representational test standard, which allows you to move between applications better. So we lock it even for the data that you have and the information, it's easier to transfer. Okay? So these are 5 key things that we see, and I can expand on these as we get into the panel discussion. My final slide here is, this is a view of something, of course, we call playbooks. And I wanted to just mention that we tackle difficult issues like transitioning or bringing your business to the cloud. Rather than writing a lot of whiz-bang research or big ideas, we try to put it in a methodology to make things easier for companies because these changes can be complex. And for each of these areas, we have research and toolkits and documents to guide throughout the entire process. I have my email address here in the bottom. There's a report that we did that talked about this process. If you're interested in that report, you can email me, and I'll be happy to send that to you so you can can dive a bit deeper into some of the things I've talked about today. Okay? And for me, that is it. Thank you very much. And I believe now Simon, or is it Todd?
Thank you so much. Were you guys just fighting over who's going next?
We're so eager.
Was Simon next?
All right.
Good, now I have to just prepare. Oh. Okay. It is indeed. Hang on. I'm going to have a hard time introducing you. That's me doing that with the microphone, I'm sorry. I just need one more hand. Okay, our next speaker is Todd Sion. He's the Chief Marketing and Operations Officer for Microsoft's Asia Pacific region. In addition to that, Todd has been a football player and coaches football here in Singapore. American football I am talking about. We are at Thanksgiving time. Anything I talk about that you might interpret as American or European is American today. I think that's a good rule. There was one other thing that I was going to say about you. Hang on. What was it, Todd?
You asked interesting things the team may not know about me. When I was 9 years old, I saved my own allowance and I bought an Atari 2600. And then soon after that, a Commodore 64 as well. And I actually coded on an early PC a long time ago.
So I describe Todd as a sort of athletic nerd. Todd, take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's great. Is this okay? Do I need this good now? Is the feedback okay? Okay, very good. How many in the room are in the financial services industry? Anybody in the financial services industry? Okay. How about telecommunications? Anybody in telecommunications? Okay. Legal? Anybody in legal? All right. That helps me get a flavor for who's in the room. How about size of organizations? How many of you are representing organizations today that have over 10,000 employees? Okay? Over 5,000 employees. So hopefully the folks that raised their hand with 10,000 continue to raise their hand. Over 1,000 employees? 1,000 employees? Okay, how about 500? Over 500. All right, it gives me a flavor of who's in the room. Today I'm going to talk about the cloud from Microsoft's perspective as it relates largely to small and medium businesses. We can also discuss the enterprise space, but I'm going to spend the majority of my time with small and medium businesses. And clearly, there are unique opportunities the cloud represents. Dane mentioned several of those already. We're working in an environment, we're living in an environment where the pace of technology change is accelerating. If you think about the forms of media in the past and the pace of adoption, it took the radio 38 years to reach 50 million users. It took the television 13 years to reach 50 million users. The internet, it took 4 years. Facebook, it took 9 months to reach 100 million users. So the way that we're living, the way that we're working is changing at an increasing pace. I think everybody in the room would agree. Now, we actually commissioned a study recently across over 4,000 small and medium businesses globally to understand the changing landscape in work. Again, globally, some interesting things we found, some of which Dane mentioned. 95% of us in the room actually have a device likely that we purchased on our own and that we use at work. Pretty common. 71% of small and mid-sized businesses believe that they have to have their workers work anywhere. Seems pretty common. And then, almost in alignment with what Dane said, nearly 40% of small and medium businesses say they will take advantage of the cloud in the next 36 months. So the environment that we're working in is clearly changing rapidly. Now, let me explain, when we talk to small and medium businesses, and Microsoft has worked with SMBs for many, many, many years, we have some similar feedback on areas that they need some help with. And this will represent several of them. First of all, working from anywhere. As we just highlighted in that same study, 60% of workers say that they need to be able to work from anywhere in order to be productive, and businesses want to support that. It's critically important that we have access to information anywhere in SMB customers. Number two, collaboration. Obviously, the way that we work today has changed. It's very difficult to be able to get things done in a silo by yourself. We're highly independent on the industry that you work in, on others to get things done. That typically doesn't mean just in the office where you work. Likely could mean across country boundaries, could be across your own firewall with business partners as well. So being able to collaborate and work together obviously is fundamental to getting things done. In addition to that, IT. Now for small and medium-sized businesses, obviously there are less resources to get things done. IT has the same requirements, however, that large companies have as well. Managing, securing, having governance in order to have privacy standards in place, etc. So pressure on IT to be able to provide this environment, whether you have no IT as the smallest business, or you have some IT as a mid-sized business, pressure on IT is certainly changing as well. And then lastly, being able to be responsive to the costs associated with changing work environment that we're in. Clearly, we're all in the business of either delivering a return to shareholders, or if you're a privately held organization, driving as much profitability as possible to folks within the company. So this represents feedback that we receive about the environment that SMBs are working in. Let me change a little bit and go a little deeper into several areas I think that are really, really applicable to small and medium businesses. And before I do that, let me introduce Office 365. We at Microsoft believe that the cloud is not about technology as well. It is an enabler to help us work in different, more productive, more agile ways. Office 365 is a service that's an enabler. Now, most folks in the room, how many of you have used Office in the past? The majority of us have used Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, Word to be able to get things done. Obviously, those are software bits that sit on a device, likely a PC or some other form of device that you have. Office 365 provides the same type of collaboration that you've grown to be accustomed to with Office in the cloud. How many of you have used instant messaging today for getting work done on a day-to-day basis? Does anybody use instant messaging? Okay. Obviously, in order to collaborate, we have to have access to people. Office 365 is a suite of services, including productivity tools in the cloud, as well as communication services available in the cloud as well. Now let me explain a few of the capabilities that this can provide. So Office 365 is built to be enterprise-grade email collaboration tool. It's intended for business, built secure, built with utmost privacy rules in place as well. It's intended to be a collaboration place for people to get work done. SharePoint is a product that's used very pervasively by enterprises to create portals to share information and connect people. Office 365 has the same capability available in the cloud today, connect people. In addition to that, it allows you to edit and share information real time. So how many of us have shared documents via email, probably for years, and then we moved into sharing documents on a portal and changed things, check them in, check them out. You now clearly have the opportunity to edit real time together and collaborate on documents at the same time. And then lastly, connecting visually, verbally, over voice in the cloud, over video, and then real-time sharing information. So again, launched as a service to be able to support you. A couple of customers I wanted to highlight. I'm learning about this customer now. Hoka is a beverage manufacturer that also in Singapore, actually has some pretty widely known and consumed food brands. They have roughly, in this geography, about 250 employees. And they had majority of their staff working in restaurants, but also distributed, calling on new customers from a sales capacity. Very distributed workforce and team. This customer needed a solution to connect them together, real time with the right information, and have flexibility and agility to share information. And they implemented Office 365 recently and have seen a tremendous amount of value back to their enterprise. So a good example of a small business. Now, working together, as I mentioned, obviously for SMBs is very important. And the beautiful thing about using productivity in the cloud, there are 700 million Office users globally today. The common user interface that people have gotten used to in all of the productivity tools in Office are available, again, online in a cloud-based version. This is an example of Excel being used by multiple people at the same time. In addition to that, being able to hold effective meetings with point and click. Click to dial, click to launch a video conference, click to instant message, click to share any content on any type of device. Available in Office 365 in the cloud. Editing documents we've talked about. What's very important in our strategy is we recognize that not everybody is using a Windows-based device. And clearly, there's opportunities and an important focus to work cross-platform as well. Microsoft is committed to working with cloud services cross-platform, whether it is on a Windows phone, whether it's on an iPhone or an Android device. Office 365 works cross-platform in a mobile scenario. Next, a company called Hersing, pretty well-known brand in this geography in the real estate industry. Hersing has right around 250 employees at their corporate headquarters and thousands of agents across the marketplace, working with different customers. And what they found was having traditional collaboration software in their corporate headquarters certainly drove productivity at headquarters, but they had distributed types of communication with their sales force and with their agents out in the field. They looked at a variety of different cloud services, and they opted to move to Office 365 because of a few reasons. Number one, it allowed them to use technology that most of their users were very comfortable and familiar with, having used Office applications. Number two, it provided the IT organization an enterprise-grade capability to manage, protect, and have privacy standards that they required as well. And number three, it allowed them to redeploy some resources in their IT department to more strategic parts of their business. Typically today, we see that most IT organizations are spending, whether you have big IT, medium IT, or even small IT, up to 70% of their budget on maintenance, keeping the lights on. Hersing was able to redeploy a considerable amount of their budget to innovating for their business. So another good example. IT. I'm going to move forward pretty quickly through these builds, but IT, having easy IT is critically important in order to drive business process change. Those of you who raised your hands from the financial services industry or from iTech, you're not in the business of providing IT services. And most IT organizations are being scrutinized more and more and more about the business value they're bringing back to their business. We are very focused on making IT simple and easier, providing services that can help redefine business process. Ticket Monster is a good example. It's a Korean-based ticketing organization that grew from 5 employees, actually over 300 employees in the last several years. And they had a focus on providing information anywhere, at any place for their teams in order to be very fast and flexible. They also had a commitment to standards on privacy and on enterprise-grade support. As their business grew, they had more and more and more requirements to support the productivity platform that they chose. Office 365 provided a platform for them where privacy standards are upheld, as well as enterprise-grade support. So another example. Now, just to close on value, as we've talked about, the cloud represents an opportunity to change business process, but it also provides an opportunity to really manage your P&L. the uncertain economy that we're working in now, there's more and more pressure, and we're continuing to be told, on capital investments. Obviously, the cloud allows you to have a bigger focus on OpEx and less of a focus and commitment to P&L and CapEx. Most of the customers that we work with, that's a big deal to them. The barrier to entry to new technology is dropping. No longer do you have to make substantial, large-scale investments in order to adopt new technology. As Dane mentioned, cloud platforms continue to be very pervasive. And we believe there's some substantial cost savings with Office 365. Now to close, as you think about evaluating cloud in your enterprise, we've got a few recommendations just to keep in mind as you're making these decisions. So number one, as a business, it's important to think about the business model of the cloud provider that you're working with. And you need, typically, our customers tell us, a provider that is focused on enterprise-grade reliability, that have service-level agreements that map to their business requirements, and then also provide financial commitments back. So if a service is not available, backing that up with a financial commitment. Additionally, the cloud provider that has been there before, that's supported large-scale businesses before. Most of our customers tell us that's important to them. Secondly, privacy. Obviously, in the world that we're working in, with the pervasiveness of social tools, businesses tell us that having their information, knowing where it is, first of all, where their data is stored, and then secondly, ensuring that it's used appropriately, that it's not merged together with other information in a co-location scenario, that it is separated. And it is ideally not mined for information, that it's their data and their information. Most of our customers tell us that that's very important to them. Productivity as well, being able to, if you're moving to the cloud, not having to retrain your staff and getting things done. In fact, the intention of the cloud is to bring flexibility and agility to an organization. So most of the customers we work with tell us that moving things easily and seamlessly with cloud technology is very important. And then lastly, as I mentioned, support of financially backed SLA. Most of our customers tell us Office 365 has a 99.99% SLA in place for business customers, and we back it up with a financial commitment. If that is not met, we actually give you cash back, and that's something we're very, very committed to. So those are 4 recommendations that we talk to our customers about very frequently, and usually they're in alignment with those as priorities. So with that, I will close, and I'll turn the floor over, and I look forward to a question and answer session to come. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Todd.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, very nice. Our next presenter is Simon Kahn. Simon is Chief Marketing Officer with Google. Joined Google recently from American Express. How recently?
Just every year.
Okay. And Simon, something you should know about Simon that other people don't know. Oh, you don't need that. Is that he worked for Governor Bill Clinton during Governor Bill Clinton's run for presidency. And obviously Bill Clinton did win that presidency. Simon then, so in his role for Governor Bill Clinton, he was a fundraiser, one of 12 running the fundraising on a national basis. I'm not going to talk about your youth venture because it's in your bio, Simon. It's actually, Simon also started, after he left Bill Clinton's administration, started a charity organization for young kids to learn how to start and grow their own businesses, which I think is a fantastic thing also. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
It's also a lot safer than diving into the waters outside of South Africa with the white sharks. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks everyone for taking the time. I think what you're going to hear from me is very similar to what Todd and Dane have shared in terms of the trends that we see in the industry, what we're hearing from businesses about what they care about, and the types of solutions that all of us are looking to create in order to make businesses more productive and collaborative. When you think about Google, you've got a whole bunch of logos here on the left, which are the typical ones that as consumers, most of us think about Google. It's Gmail, it's YouTube, Android, Google+. These are all things that we've got literally hundreds of millions of users around the world using every day and love it. What we're finding is that increasingly companies are looking to take sort of the consumer technology that's out there that their people are comfortable with and pulling that into enterprise solutions. Enterprise-grade solutions that work for safety, security, and all the things that you need, but also that are intuitive and are easy to use and are frankly much more comfortable in terms of how people operate on a daily basis. And you know, why do we do this? Now, as we've heard before, there are some real changes that are happening throughout the industry. So the first one is mobile. Mobile sales have exceeded PC sales in 2011 for the first time ever, and that's continuing. And in the work I do around the region, I mean, there are certain places where, like in Australia, tablet sales are just exploding, and that would be sort of the new norm going forward. And then social. Increasingly, you know, there was actually an article I think today talking about how financial services firms on the street are very concerned because so many of their employees want to use social as part of their daily lives, whether they're sort of screwing around or waiting between assignments or actually doing things that contribute to the work. And the problem is that there are constraints around use of Twitter or external email services, but it's the new reality, which is that more and more organizations are actually using social technology in order to accomplish things. And then finally, we see that more and more businesses actually are eliminating their IT assets. So in 2012, we estimate roughly 20% of business will actually have no IT assets. They're using the cloud as their backbone, and it's the support for all of the applications and platforms that they need. And some transformations. Again, and this is stuff that I think we all sort of know, but it really helps Google think about focusing on the types of things that we want to develop for customers. One is that we're moving from much more local to a global and integrated world, and in terms of the way that businesses work. That can be within your own business, or it can be amongst other businesses as well. And that collaborative nature is happening 24/7. And so you need products and services that can work in all of these various markets and all the time. And frankly, the last bit is it's no longer just important to be big. And in fact, sometimes it's not good to be big. What you really want to be is fast. And you look at IT companies in particular, and you'll see that there will be multiple releases in a year, whereas in the past, that might have been one release every year or every 18 months. They sped up that product cycle just because they need to get it out faster. So you need software, you need platforms to help make that happen. And the last bit is that increasingly, what's happening is that the browser has become the desktop. So you're moving to multiple types of devices. You're using a device that maybe at home you care about. It could be an Android phone, because that's what you like, instead of BlackBerry that might be issued by your corporate office. But you still want to be able to tap into what's happening within your corporate network. And the best way to do that is through a browser-based system in the cloud. Now, in talking to companies, and again, Todd did a great job of explaining about the types of things that we all hear when we talk to enterprises, whether they're huge companies or small and medium-sized enterprises. Safety and security is number one. That's what everyone wants to make sure is happening to their information. But there are also very important considerations like making sure that the real productivity and collaboration saves that are happening. So are the employees actually embracing what you have to offer? And one of the reasons we think Google products make a lot of sense is that it's easy to adapt what you do in your off-hours life into the work environment because they're very similar experiences. You also want to make sure that you've got proven infrastructure in a cloud that is going to work. Not every cloud is the same, and there are a lot of differences that you want to look for in order to make sure that you're getting something that's always going to be up and always going to be ready to work for you. So what's Google doing? We really look at this in sort of three different buckets. Along the left here are devices. So we've got Android phones, of course, and then Chromebooks. So the Chromebooks are using the Chrome operating system and essentially are netbooks. We're offering them now in the United States at $250. So for $250, you have a very effective net device that is very fast. You open it up and it's on immediately, and you can start working immediately. Then if you go to the middle, we have a bunch of apps. We actually have about 15 different apps that we offer. But it ranges from things like Gmail, calendars, Google+, to sites, and then also to docs. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Then also the platform solutions. So what we talk about here are things like our app builder. And this allows you to very quickly develop apps for your enterprise that are specifically tailored to what you care about, and then put that up into your network. And use also our geospatial mapping technology. So this is important for companies that are, particularly if you've got a distributed sales force, so you've got a lot of logistical concerns. How do you connect all these things? How do you in real time understand where your information, your inventory, things like that are, and you can use Google Maps in order to track all of that. So that's in general kind of how we think about it. A little bit more detail about some of the apps that we have to offer. So for example, Gmail. Now when you think about Gmail, what you're probably thinking about is email. And that's definitely the starting point for this. But what we've added to it is the ability to do instant messaging, to click to call, and then also click to video chat. So all within one platform that you're used to, that you know, you can do all of those things very quickly, very easily. The second is docs, and I'll go that in a little bit more detail in a second. Third is calendar. Calendar is very simple, but also in an enterprise environment, it's optimized in order to be able to collaborate much more easily on creating, say, complex meetings or rearranging schedules in a more straightforward manner. Sites allows you to create essentially websites for your projects. And then last one is Google+. So I'll talk about Google+ and Docs in a little bit more detail. Docs. So essentially the way this works is you have control. If you look here on the upper left, this is a screenshot of somebody who's opening up a document and then wants to be able to share it. So with this, you as the owner of that document can determine what degree of sharing you can give to other people. They can edit it, they can view it, they can comment on it, those sorts of things. And then when you're actually working with the document, you can see real time who's doing what, and you can see the edits happening, you can change those edits. There's also version control. So if a day later you want to go back and see what happened before, you can go back and click on earlier versions. So we were sitting around the office and we were thinking about what would an 80s music duo do with this sort of technology?
Oh, here she comes. She's a scary lady. She's an anchor taker. She's a man gobbler. Eater. She's a man eater. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy.
Just an example. And we do this all the time in the office, but we don't actually record music with it. The other one I wanted to point out, because this is, I think, something that's certainly fairly new for most of the industry, or most different industries that we work with, is the collaboration that can happen with social platforms. So this is Google+. Just some examples of the things that you can do. The upper left corner here is what we have termed as identity. So it's essentially what you might have now in an intranet that lists all of your employees, where they work, what they do. Very easy to populate and very easy to then manage your employee and staff. On the right, one of the features of Google+ is what we call circles. And the way circles works is that from a consumer environment, you have different types of people in different parts of your life. You've got your friends from school, you've got your family. You don't necessarily share the same information with your friends from school and with your family. You can think about that in a very similar way with people at work. So this is the Project X team. And this Project X team then is moved in as you work on a project. That, when you send a note, it just goes to those folks. And then that team can talk to each other within the Google+ stream in this activity as an example. So instead of just sharing photos from your child's recent birthday party, what you can actually do is share presentations and then get comments from folks about the presentation or talk about upcoming conferences, those sorts of things. And then finally, Hangouts. So Hangouts are essentially video conferencing for multiple folks. And again, it's just a couple of clicks away, but it allows folks to come together in a much faster and more seamless way. Now, we also believe that if you can do this and you do it well, you eliminate some of the hassles that we're all kind of used to.
So yeah, I think we're good. I think that about wraps it up. So
great. I'll send a follow-up email.
There's nothing much to follow up on, so
well, we should regroup.
We just regrouped. This is the regrouping.
Cool, I'll ping you later.
You're pinging me now. What do you want to ping about?
Next steps?
There are no next steps. We just solved it.
Alright.
And I joined just a year ago, and I was amazed at how quickly I adopted this technology, and we use it all the time in the office, and how effective it can be. You just get things done that much quicker because you're actually talking to people. And again, I've got people around this region, and also back in Mountain View, so it's very effective to be able to have them face-to-face and have those conversations. So just a bit of background about what's happened with our products. We now have over 5 million businesses that are online. We sign about 5,000 businesses up every single day to the Google products. And we're seeing very similar things that you heard from Todd and Dana, or that are happening. We've got infrastructure savings, a company called Center Parks in Europe, of around 800,000, sort of a small enterprise. But then you also have the Telegraph Media Group that believes that their productivity is gone up by almost 3 times because of the Google product suite. What I wanted to do is focus on 2 companies, though, that are Asian, and one's small and one's large. So here in Singapore, there's a major real estate firm that adopted the Google Apps products because they had a distributed network of over 2,000 agents. And they were very concerned about how to share information with them. They used the Sites tool to help develop technology to put together if they were going to co-broker a property, that sort of thing. And one of the things that we heard in particular from the CEO that he loved this product for is because their agents are all carrying mobile phones. If an agent loses their phone in the morning, we can wipe out the information on that phone, get them a new phone, and then by noon they're up and running again. Because all of the context, all of the information is sitting in the cloud, and you can easily pull that back in and very quickly be up and running. So there's great productivity gains. And then on the whole other end of the spectrum is a company called POSCO in Korea. So POSCO is one of the world's leading steel companies. And what POSCO has done is they've purchased over 20,000 seat licenses at this point. And they're using it for some very interesting devices and uses. So for example, they use our real-time translators that happen through Google products in order to communicate with multiple users on their cell phones, no matter what market they're working in. And then they're also using our mapping technology to check the distribution of their supplies and the products. So it's things that's not necessarily intuitive that you think about from a consumer-based perspective, but then very large companies are also starting now to apply it as well. And just in summary, let me give you a sense of how all of this can kind of work together and put it in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. I'm going to invite you to have a seat. Dane and Todd, please come up. Why don't you take these 3 seats? It's a little easier to see you from out there if you're in those 3. Everyone's mic is working. Do I need to put Dane between you 2? Listen, a big round of applause for those initial comments, please. Okay, really informative. We're gonna go straight into Q&A, but I'm gonna start us off with one question. Oh, and I should probably let you know that I tend to ask at least one stupid question. So this is the first of what may be many, but my stupid question is, I'm a small business owner. You haven't given me the information I need. First of all, how do I start is my question. First of all, how do I determine what parts of my business? You've told me, Todd, that I don't need to put all of my business requirements onto the cloud. Some of them will suffice. How do I choose? Where do I start? That's really the question.
Yeah, so I think the simple answer is you try it out. Where do you have opportunities to save money, increase revenue, engage with customers in a new way? And with Microsoft solutions, it's as easy as a trial. Off of Microsoft.com for $6 per user per month. You can actually move users to the cloud that easily. Typically what customers tell us is majorities or parts of their enterprise they will move to the cloud, and for a variety of reasons there may be some scenarios or some workloads or part of their organization they may want to leave not in the cloud.
What would those parts be, Todd?
Well, where you might have sensitive information, where you may have very distributed workforce, where you don't have a lot of high bandwidth. We've got organizations we work with in the oil field and oil rig management that do have Wi-Fi enabled satellite connections, but they're intermittent at best. So having on-premise technology is something that's important to many of our customers tell us. So being able to have flexibility between the two usually is something that's important. But it's as easy as setting up a trial if you want to try out Office 365.
And I want both of you to answer also, but I want to check here really quickly just so the speakers know where we are as an audience. How many of you are have services in the cloud currently? Most all of you. How many of you do not but are looking at it? Okay, so my question wasn't stupid for you guys anyway. Is that the same question that you would have? Are you looking? I'm gonna come back to both of you. Who else is looking at cloud services and looking at what they would want to, where they want to move to cloud? Oh, now everyone's afraid of me. Wow. Okay, thanks, Bob. All right, let's go on. Simon, tell me what you would say to me if you were going to advise me.
Well, I think it's important to understand what do you want to accomplish with it, right? And is it because you've got a sales force that's distributed through a pretty broad region, and it moves very quickly, so you need to have real-time information. At the moment, you enable them with mobile phones, but how do you take that further? Is it that you need that you've got huge data storage requirements, and you need someplace to put that, and you want a solution that's economical, but it's also safe and secure. But the first thing is to understand all of that. And I think with small businesses, I mean, again, we offer for free the product for up to 5 seat licenses. So that's an opportunity again for a small business just to get up and get going. I totally agree with Todd that it's not, there will be situations where you're going to want to have a mix of these things. And I also believe that you're seeing it, kind of people are stepping into the water, they're trying it out, they're seeing how it goes. And then as people get more and more comfortable, just as I think happened with buying things online, folks are very freaked out about that at first, but over time that became more and more a normal thing. So as people understand it, get more comfortable with how technology out, we'll see more and more things being pushed into the cloud.
Dave, before you answer, I want to ask those of you with services in the cloud currently, how many of you I'm going to ask the difference between public, private, and hybrid? Is that my third choice? Okay, how many of you have public? How many private? And how many hybrid? Okay, you would know. All right, talk to me then, as an SME or as an enterprise, about how would I make the decision and the distinction between public, private, and hybrid? It's hybrid that really confuses me.
I mean, the first thing I would say is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So if you have something that's working and it's supporting your business in the right way and you're happy with it, leave it be. Maybe you can improve things, but I generally don't think that's the best place to start. And then I agree with what Simon and Todd said is, what is your challenge? What is the business issue? And I think those we can cut 2 different ways. One is more defensive, and one is more on the offense, right? So is it that you want to cut costs? is that they don't have skills to run IT the way that you'd like to. That's a big problem for SMEs. Most SMEs don't, in fact, have IT people, right? So that can be the issue. That's looking at the defense. And then you look at the offense. You know, are you faster with the market? Are you losing share? Could you be more nimble or agile if you go to something where you don't have to worry about managing the technology and you can move it to the cloud? So in terms of your first question, I'd say if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and then figure out what's the business issue. And I think that's either the defense or the offense. In terms of public, private, or hybrid, I think some applications lend themselves more toward public. And I think Todd references as well. There's some that are less, they have data that's less sensitive. Or they're not quite as mission critical, perhaps. I think on the public side, those can work better. Areas where that works well, like collaboration, email, video conferencing, things of that sort. CRM is another one that's been very, very successful with public clouds. Also, I think that's been proven. So, you know, sometimes when we talk about public cloud enterprises, will say, well, it's not secure. And I was at a discussion like this in Singapore maybe a year ago. And he said, well, you know, CRM is taking off, and you know, they said someone mentioned that well, that doesn't need such high security. So I said, well, you're absolutely wrong. These are our customers. This is where we spend this is where we get it. So in fact, it does need to be more secure. Big banks, you name it, governments, they use it for CRM now. So I think there are some red herrings out there that, as Simon said, that anytime there's a new technology, trial security. That's the first concern. A big one that's coming out now is data residency. I think it's now kind of taking place in security as a big concern. And for those of you who don't know what that means, data residency means, of course, where does the data reside for this cloud application that I'm using? And I think there's some confusion on that, and I think now that is replacing security as a key concern. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, I'm expecting there are some other questions. I can keep going, but anybody? Give us your name and company, please.
Thanks, Mike Creed with PwC. But one of the biggest issues that I sense around is, you touched on, is around privacy. And regulators globally, I think, are taking different views as to what they require and how comfortable they are, and particularly in the financial services sector. I mean, what has been done currently, I mean, working with regulators to get them comfortable, because I know, for example, in Indonesia, they're very different to what you're more likely to be able to do up here. And I mean, how do you start bridging that gap?
We had Forrester CIO Summit here in Singapore in September, and the financial services firms that we talked to, that was the key issue they raised. Citibank, Credit Agricole, they all said, look, residency is an issue for us, and we're struggling with it. And the truth of the matter is that there is a lot of confusion. The regulators haven't set a clear path, frankly, yet in a lot of cases. I think that one of the things that came out from those discussions is talk to the regulators. I think oftentimes we feel fearful of them, and one of the outcomes of this event is when you talk to them and pull them into the process, they'll help them. They're not in it to go after you. I think they're struggling with it too. I wish I could tell you that there's a regulation or development which has happened. I think all of them are moving along a bit. There are questions, but I think just reaching out to the regulators and talking to them about it is a really good important first step. And you'll learn when you do that they'll work with you. That's what I've seen anyway.
Yeah, I would just say it's very similar. We find that the technology is outpaces the regulations and the regulators. And so it is very important to bring them in. They're also looking for examples of places where test cases where it's worked. And you know, one of the things that we've seen in the United States is that we've got in 40 different states, either state or local governments, who have now adopted Google Apps. And so there's a sense of, well, if it's good enough for the state government, then maybe we should take a less defensive stance towards it. In other places, particularly I think with smaller organizations, it's more an education. It's more just sort of saying, here's what the product is, and here's what it can do for you. And are you willing to because change is always hard, no one likes change, right? But if you see enough benefit from this, then you're gonna make that happen. So I think that's the big thing I've seen in small.
Geography, I think, is another pivot as well. Infrastructure build out within certain countries, of course, is not all the same. Government regulation is not all the same as well. That has a big play on adoption we've seen globally. There's a curve that comes as governments build out infrastructure and as they open up as well.
The only other one I'd add to that would be integration of the applications. So I think there's been a lot of headway. You can have different applications working well together in a siloed way. Sorry.
Thanks, yeah, well, it's very quiet all of a sudden. That's better.
Yeah, so that would be the other one I would point out that I would agree with what was said.
Good, I've got a question here.
Alan Turner from Hewlett Packard Enterprise Services Consulting. We're obviously involved in doing consulting with our clients, moving what elements of their environment to the cloud and what sort of cloud environment. I've got a very specific question for Simon from Google. There's a very specific pitch by Todd when he was talking about Microsoft and taking the intimacy that Microsoft clients have now with their desktop environment of Office and Outlook and moving it to the cloud with 360. And obviously that intimacy is a strong pitch from client usability of that cloud environment. How does Google pitch against that when they put the Google story forward?
But it's 365. It is, don't lose the 5. That's very important. I think the general message that we have in terms of why Google products can work for you, work for your organization, is around sort of the ease of the products that you know and use every single day from a consumer perspective. And more what we see for the companies that are bringing in young people is those young people, it's just in their DNA. They know how to do these things. They're very comfortable doing these things. And what you can do is you can start to apply that into your organization and create, as Dane talked about, you can create some organizational change, quite frankly, in terms of the way things are run. And so this gives you an opportunity to make that happen. I think the other piece that's important is that we really believe in open platforms. We really believe in the ability to work on multiple different phone devices, or tablets, or types of PC, or Apple computers, whatever it may be. And if you're going to do that, then you really need to have something that's going to be agnostic and it's going to sit above that. And that's where we see a browser-based environment really working well for that. And then the final bit is just to make sure that the products that you have are integrated and can work very well seamlessly. And so, again, I'm not necessarily going to say we're going to pitch against, but in terms of how we talk about the products that we offer and what we may deliver for the clients, those are the things we tend to focus on.
I've got one right here.
Hi, this is Rashish from British Telecom. My question is to Dane. As we move infrastructure and applications to the cloud, how is the role of the CIO and the IT organization changing? And what are some of the concerns and how are people looking at it?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I think it's changing radically. I think I remember I was giving a presentation on this maybe 10 years ago, and I would say the role's changing. Now it's being forced upon people, right? As you just said, nobody likes to change. I think the way it's changing is that there's now this shadow IT. So you have a line of business buyers buying IT with no knowledge or involvement from the CIO. And in fact, the CIO used to tell people, well, you can't bring this device in this office, and the CEO brought it in and said, think again, but now I'm going to be using this device. So the power has shifted, basically. They can no longer mandate you will use this device, this application. Those days are gone forever. So I think the way it's changing is they need to get that mindset. What we talk about at Forrester is having a system of guardrails, which is help them select the technology, guide them on it, and don't try to restrict it. Help to educate them on how to choose the applications, your evaluation of which ones work well, which ones don't, the availability requirements, the integration requirements. So they become more of an advisor rather than some kind of command and control structure they've had before. One other key thing that we're seeing is the chief marketing officer becoming much more important to buy. If you look at the marketing spend of companies, it's moving from analog to digital, right? And what drives businesses? It is customers and revenue growth and market share gains. And if you're not using digital technologies to do that. A lot of them are in the cloud, and they have mobility and social networking, things of that sort. So the CMO is becoming much more important. So I think, to summarize, I would say they need to understand that they cannot mandate. It's no longer command and control. I think they need to become much more savvy with business as well. What is the business value of the business issues you're solving? They come in and talk about the 70% they traditionally spend on keeping the lights on. They're toast. That just doesn't fly anymore. When we talk to CIOs, we see them starting to get that. About 50% of them, I'd say, get it, and we'll only change about 50%. In my opinion, no offense, if they're here, I think about 50% won't change. I think there's going to be a generational flow that comes to companies and pushes them over. So that's how I see it changing. It's causing a lot of disruption.
Yeah, Dan, if I can add as well, I've worked at leading enterprise sales forces in the last 20 years and working with CIOs in this region, and the feedback that I've received and we continue to receive is exactly what you described. IT budgets are being distributed rather than centralized, or getting very distributed because of barriers of entry that bring new solutions in. But what remains consistent, though, is the pressure that CIO has around security, around management, around privacy. They essentially are the gatekeeper for these applications, being able to secure and manage them. And we work on ensuring that those budgets are used to drive an ROI to the business, but ensuring there's a common platform that can be managed and secured in easy ways. As all those devices are coming in to organizations, and as all those applications are coming in as well, it's tough. The CIOs can manage and secure, and that's something that we work really hard on.
I think it's a good point, Tony. Some business leaders have gone and bought an application on the road, and they have a big problem later, and then they come back. So it's not all bad news for the CIO. I think a lot of line of business buyers buy and do go to them eventually, but that is an important issue.
Okay. Tim, I'm coming your way in just a second.
Hi, Danielle Warner from Expat Insurance. I run a small team, so there's 17 of us. We have been using Salesforce since the beginning of our business, which has been a fantastic CRM solution for us. We needed a solution, a cloud solution to offer mobility mostly to our team. We migrated to 365 and SharePoint earlier this year, which I can't espouse the benefits of cloud solutions now for small businesses. But we recently discovered that there's something called the cached exchange mode, and Todd, I won't grill you on the technicality of that. I'll be graceful. But what we've discovered in this mode is that actually, while all of our information and archive of all of our past files over the last, the history of the business has moved to the cloud, it also still sits on PST files on hard disks on the machine. So are we in the cloud or are we not? Because we've been told by Microsoft that, as well as our migration consultant, that we really should stay in this mode, and that speed is significantly increased if we stay in this mode and we continue to back up our files on hard disks, which for us as a small business is a challenge because of storage. So are we in the cloud or are we not?
So I'd love to understand the details more and love to talk to you offline about it. It sounds like there's a scenario that you have a hybrid situation where you're storing things offline for, in your environment to increase speed, depending upon your infrastructure. And so I don't know, you're using cloud solutions, you're using Office 365, you're able to do things from a variety of different device types, from the browser or from your desktop if you want. So I think the answer is yes. But maybe you raised a good point though, in that every implementation can be a little bit different depending upon the business's needs and depending upon the infrastructure that you have in place. What we focus on is having a broad scale offering so we can get a price point down to a very, very reasonable place so it makes sense and there's an ROI to move from on-premise to the cloud. At the same time, have flexibility on some implementation, depending on each business. So I'd love to talk to you offline in a little bit more detail to make sure the solution you have exactly meets your company's needs.
I'm here. Thank you. Anyone else? Did either of you want to? Okay, I've got one right here, and then I'm coming over.
So Tim Plummer from Taylor Ventures. So I spent many years of my career advising on data laws. I'm a lawyer around the world. One of the big issues which I observed there is that one of the problems that I think Dane refers to about data residency is that law is often based on myth and misunderstanding. And so you get sort of policy-based evidence rather than evidence-based policy. And just one thing that I think all three of you have said today is, as an assumption, public cloud is less secure because it's for the less sensitive information, which kind of, it sounds right. If we think about that shared infrastructure, it sounds right. But I guess the question is it right? Because if you're a business trying to understand this, you've got an emotive response and then you've got an fact-based response. But I just wanted interested in whether you personally think that public cloud solutions are less secure inherently than the private cloud ones.
I think that for about 98% of companies in the world, public cloud is more secure than what they do and can do, actually. If you look at, and assuming that 99% of companies in the world are SMEs, right? Most SMEs don't have proper security processes at all. Actually, I think if you look at the practices and policies of public cloud operators, their security is head and shoulders above what your average SME does. That's what I think. I think a lot of competitors I talk to. As an example, Symantec is a security company. They use Salesforce.com. And from what I understand, Salesforce.com tried to get into our data center, try to hack us. And they did, and they tried, I don't know for how long, 3 or 4 weeks, and now they use it, and they've been using it for years. So I think for the majority of companies, I think it's more secure. Perhaps maybe we weren't clear, as I think there's some applications which may require higher SLA level, higher uptime, and when you do it yourself, you have 100% control of that. And so you sink or swim, and you control that, which can be a very good thing to have. There are latency issues too for some applications, right? For example, the brokerage industry, milliseconds can mean millions of dollars. In most cases, perhaps you want your own data center. So security is something we take seriously. But I do feel that most companies it's more secure than I can manage. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think it might be more around the availability and kind of that guarantee of uptime. That there's some applications you think are private instead.
And then, as we've already talked about data sovereignty, there are requirements for data to be within.
Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thanks. I'm conscious of time. We've got a few more minutes, correct, Henry? I'm okay? All right, good. I just want to invite all of you, before we go to the next question, please feel free to get up and get coffee. I'm sure our speakers will agree that it's perfectly fine if you'd like to move around, make sure you've got your coffee before you face your afternoon meetings. So, all right, and here we have another question.
Andy Oliver from Lewis. Question for Dane. Adoption of cloud computing in Asia Pacific, do you foresee any specific countries or markets which will see the biggest growth over the next few years? And also, do you think there are any challenges or opportunities specific to Asia Pacific regarding cloud adoption? I
think thus far, if you look at percentage terms, the highest adoption would have been in Singapore, as I think I showed. Australia is very high, some more developed countries. But I think if you look at absolute numbers, you start seeing enormous growth in more of the emerging markets like Indonesia, Philippines. I think some of the issues that Todd mentioned a moment ago with regard to just broadband penetration, things of that sort, will be challenges in those markets. And I also feel that in China, it's a more complex, tricky market because of some of the government regulations and concerns on that front as well. So I think China's a bit interesting to watch. I think it's going to move there as well. It's a bit of a trickier market. I think in terms of unique opportunities in Asia, I think one thing a lot of people thought was lack of legacy infrastructure, right? So I think there is an opportunity to bypass certain phases of IT. Since I've been in Asia, that's something we've talked about for a long time. Let's leapfrog that. And it doesn't always meet the promise. I think with the cloud now it will in a lot of ways because of the mobility equation and the fact that is the access that people have, rather than having to wait for a wired connection to their home for India's 1.2 billion people. That might take a very long time. So this wireless capability will allow it, I think, to bypass certain phases, which I think is unique to Asia. So I think that's what we'll see happen. And in talking to some vendors, some large international vendors have launched public cloud offerings. They were in fact expecting Asia to lag, and in fact it grew faster than the West, which was counterintuitive to them. So I think we will see adoption pick up more quickly here for a lot of sectors. There's a lot of SMEs here. It's cloud or nothing, frankly. If you want to implement a CRM application, a lot of other ones, and say you have distributed offices in the country or across the region, to buy a server in all these places, you just can't do it. So I suppose those are the things that will be different in Asia.
Questions? Andrew? Anybody? Yeah, okay. I'll go in. I'll jump. Actually, no, it's... My question is, let's talk for a second. Let's shift a little bit over to big data. Just kind of curious to hear your thoughts and views, what that means to you conceptually, what that means to you practically. Let's talk for a second about big data. You mentioned it very early in your presentation today. I'll let you start.
Big data is the new cloud as far as the buzzwords go. So used to hearing about it a lot because just at the beginning. And like everything else in the industry, height always exceeds the reality when it comes to these trends. It's enormously interesting and promising. What big data is all about is, as I talk about, 4 Ps. So it's velocity of data, volume of data, variety of data, structure. There are breakthroughs in technology now which allow you to analyze and make sense of that information much faster than you used to be able to. Things like flash memory and other architectural systems. It enables you to analyze the data much faster. It used to maybe take 3 weeks to run a certain type of analysis. Now it can take 30 seconds. So that's what it is, and a lot of companies are finding ways to apply that new opportunity for competitive advantage. There was an example in the University of Indiana or something, was analyzing Twitter feeds and social media, and they were able to create an algorithm which predicted the movements of the market based on feeds that they were getting from Twitter and Facebook and so on and so forth. This is something that was academically proven. There are other implementations like that. I think that for most companies, they really right now don't know what to do with it. I think they're confused. And the problem becomes there's so much that you can analyze, there's so much that you can do. And a lot of organizations drown in all that opportunity. So like the advice we gave today is, I think you have to start with what's the business issue that you're trying to solve. And there are also very different unique skills that organizations, when we talk about organizational change. They're talking now a lot of companies about data scientists. So you describe Todd as a athletic nerd, with these data scientists, we need people who are very good quantitative, but also have a good business mind and can match those two together, and that doesn't always happen. So if I were getting another degree right now, I'd get it in information science. There's a huge opportunity, and there will be for the next 20 or 30 years. But I think we're at the very early stages of where it is right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, and in some of the conversations that I have with companies, a couple of things come out that are exactly what you're talking about. One is that in marketing organizations, increasingly, they are saying, we need to hire somebody who has an advanced science degree or math degree, rather than somebody great at economics. And because that's the person who's really going to be able to mine this big data to come up with insights that we can act on in real time. And companies are still, and there's a huge business opportunity for folks to create packages and create businesses to help companies understand how to mine all this. We certainly at Google obviously have a lot of data. And one of the things that we do is we look at this for, obviously, for business purposes, but also for other purposes. So based on queries, we can actually track and predict where flu outbreaks will happen. Because you start to look at search queries and you start to see things for, symptoms, CV, runny nose, fever, and then that allows us to be able to say, okay, we're going to have an outbreak of flu coming in certain places. So that's an interesting way for us to be able to help. But because there's so much opportunity there, companies are really struggling to figure out how to best take all of that and apply it to their business.
I'll have two quick comments too. Number one, I think all of us that have grown up in the workforce over the last couple of decades, maybe in the early days, we're used to relying on IT or another department to provide us insights out of information. I think gone are those days that we're used to centralized reporting, and we've worked really hard at democratizing information and the ability to query and evaluate and analyze information. And the way we do that, quite frankly, is through a pretty ubiquitous tool called Excel. And we continue to build capabilities into it, put it in the hands of end users, so that you can analyze data on your own in more powerful ways, having technology to enable it for you. The second thing I'll say is, we have a massive amount of data too that we collect, both in our consumer technologies and our commercial technologies. And I think it is really important to be judicious with data and to use it in the right way. So it's really, really clear distinction between our really commercial assets and our consumer-based assets. And the way that we use that data is very, very different.
There's a couple of things that the democratization one, I completely agree with that. We had Citibank spoke at our CIO summit. They said, gave the example that if surveys have been done where you ask people, do you think you are average intelligence, or do you think you're more intelligent than the average person? And so I think the survey said like 80% of people say they think they're more intelligent than the average person, which of course is impossible as a developer. And his point was that you have to be really careful, when you give information that people know how to use it properly. Just two other examples I give on big data which are interesting. One is this company called Dutch Bank. They gave an example at our Australia event where there was a CIO, and he said one of their markets is Turkey. And he said that in Turkey, there's real dissatisfaction with banks. I don't know if they're bad banks, but he said they were tracking social media to find when people complained about competitive banks. And then they had, through using big data, they analyzed and they would have their reps call those people when they saw that and say, we have the pleasure of doing business with you. And they said it was very successful. Now they're rolling out in a lot of different places. The other one was, I think, Ellie from the NC is here. In Singapore, and I imagine most of us live here, when it rains, oftentimes you can't get taxis. And so through big data, this analysis that they did, they found that people thought it was because more people want taxis at that time. What they found is because they are, if a taxi driver in Singapore gets in an accident, they hold back something like $1,500 in his pay or something, or like that, until it's resolved. So rather than taking that risk going out on the roads, they are staying off until the rain stops. They found that through big data by tracking where the taxis are, and they found when it rains, a lot of them actually went off to they were stationary at a coffee shop or that sort. Those are just two examples of how you can apply this in smart ways to solve real problems.
Very interesting. A one or two word answer from each of you. How long until big data becomes just normal data?
Yeah, 3 o'clock.
Really, that fast? You agree, Tom?
I might even say faster.
What do you guys think? How long before big data becomes normal data? Can I see show of hands who think it'll happen within 5 years? 10? And the rest of you are just too shy, or you think it's more than 10? Okay. All right. Very, very interesting. Thank you very much. Can we please thank our